Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Lush Foliage. In today's video, we will be talking about what is a perennial plant and what is a tender perennial. Basically the difference between perennial and tender perennial. Now guys, a lot of majority of the plants are perennial plants, which includes our philodendrons, monsteras, syngoniums, water plants, pothos, you name it, and majority of our foliage plants, including a lot of flowering plants, are also perennials. Now, perennial is a type of plant that survives for a very long period of time. By definition, perennial plant survives for more than 2 years in some cases in their natural habitat, unlike an annual which only survives for a year. A lot of these plants will survive for, let's say, 4 years, 5 years, or even 6 years. For example, this pothos that I have over here, my Monjula pothos, this is a perennial plant. It will survive for a very long time, probably more than 5 years as well. So this is a perfect example of a perennial plant. Whether it is winters, monsoon, summer, autumn, fall, any season, this plant is going to survive. It is not going to drop its leaves. It is going to continue to grow healthy. On the other hand, I have this chrysanthemum and this foliage plant, which is called as a caladium. It has just come out of its dormancy, so the leaves are quite small. So these are a perfect example of tender perennial. Now, a tender perennial is defined as a perennial plant that can live for many years, but usually during winters, these are not very hardy, basically not winter hardy. They will die during the winters or in a particular season. Sometimes these plants are also called as annuals for the sake of simplicity, but they are not true annuals because they can live for more than a year. The basic definition of a tender plant or a tender perennial plant is that they will not survive the winters outdoors because it is very sensitive to frost. But you will also find some plants that are labeled as heat tender. This is because the term tender is sometimes used referring to plants that are sensitive to hot temperature as well. So basically these plants will not be able to tolerate really high temperatures. Whether it is intense winters or hot summers, the plant is going to disappear from the pot. But that doesn't mean that the plant is dead. Either the roots, tubers, or the bulbs will stay hibernated beneath the soil, and once they feel that the outside temperature above the soil is getting comfortable, they will start to sprout back and they will start to regrow. So these plants are called as tender perennials. Similar to perennials, the only thing is that they cannot handle a certain season or a certain temperature. But similar to perennial plants, these are permanent plants. You get them once and they are going to stay in your garden. Unlike perennial, they are going to be there throughout the year for a couple of years in your garden. The only thing with tender perennials is that they are going to stay permanently in your garden, but they might disappear or be absent in a particular season, whether it's winter or whether it's summer. Again, this applies to mostly a lot of flowering plants, but also certain foliage plants. For example, the best example is a caladium. It will completely disappear off during the winters, depending upon how intense the winter is. A lot of people tend to treat the tender perennial caladium as an annual because if you are from a place wherein you experience snowfall or frost, you cannot leave the caladium tubers in the soil because the snow, the frost will damage the tubers. They will get rotted. So mostly people who are from an environment that tends to experience snowfall or frost, they tend to take out the caladium tubers from the soil and they tend to store them indoor. But this, a lot of times this all applies to people who are from non-tropical climate. I belong to a tropical climate, so this is not much of an issue for me. I tend to leave my caladium tubers in the pot throughout the year, and whenever it's ready for them to sprout, they tend to sprout automatically. Same thing goes with the flowering plants as well. I do not do any kind of cuttings or I do not pull out the plant. I just leave them in the pot because of the beautiful tropical climate. They tend to come back every year. Same thing with chrysanthemums as well. In some places, due to extreme winters, they might happen to shed off all of the leaves. Of course, they won't be flowering. They are going to drop off all of the leaves. They are going to keep their roots beneath the soil, and eventually when the temperatures get better, they will start to bloom back again. It all depends upon your climate and environment. Same thing goes with our caladiums as well. So in short, we have perennials, we have tender perennials. Perennials will be permanent plants that are going to stay in your garden. They are not going to disappear from the pot. They will stay in, whether it's winters, whether it's monsoon, summer, any season, the perennials will stay. They will keep continuing to grow. But on the other hand, our tender perennials are also permanent plants. The only thing is that they will disappear for a short period of time in your garden, but eventually when the climate, the environment is suitable, they will start to sprout and grow back. Now, I'm not very sure of how others tend to keep their mums alive, especially people who are from places where they experience snowfall or frost. I would like to hear how do you tend to keep your mums alive during the winter season, because they are not frost hardy plants. They will die in frost. So I would love to hear in case if you grow mums. There is another perfect example of a tender perennial, which is a wild plant native to India. I will put up the name on the screen, the scientific name. It's called as Typhonium roxburghi. I'm not very sure if I pronounced that correct. It is a very regular, normal looking plant, but it gets an absolutely beautiful flower. I'll put up on the screen. Again, this is a tender perennial. In their natural habitat, they tend to disappear during the winters. Ideally, by the end of summer, the beginning of the monsoon season is when they start to sprout. I couldn't find this plant anywhere in my garden because, again, I had got this plant from another place, but during this monsoon season, because it's already starting to rain over here, and I noticed that there are a couple of them that have started to sprout back. I do have the tubers inside the soil. The same thing, just like any other tender perennial, they tend to drop off the leaves, but the tuber or the bulb is going to stay beneath the soil. When the climate or the environment is favorable, they will start to sprout back, and same thing with this plant as well. So I'm sure you might have got a fair idea what is the difference between a perennial and a tender perennial. Probably some other time I will be talking about annual plants as well. It is pretty simple. These plants only survive for a year, but again, there are 3 more divisions under annuals, and that's what we will be talking in future. So guys, that's about it. I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button, and if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe, and keep planting.